So where's the office? Back at Division?
In the office, baby.
Speaking of crappy training day, it's hard not to leave out Leon as Kennedy, one of the two playable characters in the main campaign of Resident Evil 2. He comes to Raccoon City for his very first shift at the local police department, but instead of cake and balloons, he's greeted by the creepy Mr. X and Officer Marvin Branagh, who I've always firmly associated with Denzel Washington, doesn't turn into some kind of mentor or a teacher for a young rookie. Instead, he turns into a zombie. Tough luck. But Leon's campaign isn't all doom and gloom, there's also room for romance. This is where we first meet the femme fatale Ada Wong, who, spoiler alert, will appear in every game that features Leon. We get to watch how their toxic, or should I say, biohazard relationship takes root, and find out the answer to the question, can the greatest romance of your life last only one night? Yep, that's another nod to an Ethan Hawke movie. The second main character is Claire Redfield, sister of Chris Redfield, who we know from the first game. She comes to town looking for her brother, who, as we later learn from his diary, went off to Umbrella HQ in Europe, and didn't bother telling his sister, for her own safety of course. Oh, the irony. Claire's campaign has no room for romance. Here things get serious. After realizing Chris isn't around and that she came all the way for nothing, the smart girl decides it's about time to get the hell out. But when she stumbles upon a lonely child wandering the police station, she restarts her rescue mission, deciding she's not leaving the city without her. Then, like little Sherry, is just an ordinary kid from a very extraordinary family. Her parents are grind culture-obsessed umbrella scientists, and her father just so happens to be the creator of the G-Virus, an even nastier and more powerful version of the T-Virus. When Umbrella decided that the research in Raccoon City was getting out of control and drawing too much attention, they sent in a squad of gas mask guys to do a big cleanup and secure a sample of the G-Virus. During the op, one of them cracked under stress and filled Birkin with lead. But just before death, Birkin injected himself with a dose of the homemade virus. And that's how we're introduced to the main antagonist of Claire's campaign, get an explanation of how the outbreak began, and why this hulking monster with an eyeball on its arm is so hell-bent on finding Sherry. Resident Evil 2 doesn't hold back when it comes to its story. After the unexpected success of the first game, Capcom decided to go with the harder, better, faster, stronger principle for the sequel. And it's written much better too. Sure, there are still some cringe lines here and there, but it no longer feels like the script was penned by Tommy Wiseau.
Leon, please, escape.
No. We're a team. I can't just leave you behind.
Anyway, how is your sex life?
There are also good news from the visual department. For starters, the live-action cutscenes were thrown straight into the trash, so no more goofing around. Instead, we got some pretty impressive FMVs. As I mentioned in my review of the first game, back in my childhood I played the first Resident Evil titles with all the cutscenes and dialogue removed, so I only got to see them now for the very first time, and damn, they still look fantastic even today. In my opinion, Resident Evil 2 is the best looking entry of the original trilogy. Compared to the first game, which essentially took place in a single location, Spencer Mansion, that despite its surrounding areas like the garden, guardhouse and lab, still felt claustrophobic and samey. Here we get a much wider variety of environments and far more detailed pre-rendered backgrounds. Even if you just look at the police station, where you'll spend most of the game, it's already miles ahead of the mansion. Built inside a former museum, it's huge, mysterious, and yet functional, even with all its secret passages and bizarre puzzles, which this time at least have a somewhat reasonable explanation, courtesy of Chief Iron's shady hobbies. It still feels like a real police station, complete with the reception, interrogation room, briefing room, and so on. I also really like the short but impactful street segment in Raccoon City, a concept that would later be expanded in the third game. The streets are filled with the details that show how the city went through panic and destruction in the last few days, and now rests in a quiet, eerie, but deadly state. Other locations like the sewers, the factory, the umbrella lab are also quite interesting, with some really cinematic camera angles, probably the biggest strength of fixed camera survival horror. However, to experience all of these locations, you'll actually need to beat the game twice. Let me explain why. The approach to character campaigns here was taken to a whole new level compared to the first game, thanks to the Zapping System. What does it mean? Basically, the game features two different timelines, depending on which character you start with. And each of these timelines is split into two playthroughs. First, you go through the game as one character and see the main chain of events from their perspective. And then, by playing as the second character, you get to see what was happening to them at the very same time. For example, if you first play as Claire, the so-called Scenario A, you'll unlock Scenario B for Leon. In it, you not only visit familiar locations in a different order and interact with the new characters, but you'll also encounter enemies that weren't there in the first playthrough, explore new areas that weren't available in Claire A, try out new weapons, and in the finale, you even unlock the true ending with the true final boss that doesn't exist in Scenario A. And if you instead start Scenario A with Leon, the campaign will still differ significantly, not only from Claire A, but also from Leon B, which means the game essentially offers you 4 different playthroughs. And I'll be honest, I'm not really the kind of player who enjoys replaying games over and over again. Usually the urge to replay only comes to me after a few years, when the memories of my last run fade. But replaying Resident Evil 2 was genuinely fun, and maybe this sounds strange. It didn't feel like replaying at all, but more like playing through a brand new campaign in the same game. On top of that, an average blind playthrough of one campaign without knowing what to do or where to go only took about 3 to 4 hours, so the game definitely doesn't overstay its welcome. Depending on the scenario, events and details might vary for each character, but the overall storyline stays the same. It's also quite replay friendly because the gameplay is very strong. Blasting zombies to pieces or dodging them never gets old. Resident Evil 2 gives you an even bigger arsenal of weapons this time around, each with its own strength and best used scenarios. For example, playing as Claire you'll get the bow gun, perfect for clearing out crowds of zombies, after which you can finish off the stragglers with your pistol. And that's satisfying in its own right because the gunplay feels impactful. Every shot has a nice heavy pop, echoed by the ringing clink of the fallen shell casing. Later, when you face off against the plant-like creatures in Umbrella's lab, the game hands you a new toy, the flamethrower. Sure, it's a pretty specific weapon for some pretty specific enemies, but Resident Evil has always been about using the right tool for the right job. And in some cases, you don't even need to shoot at all. When you come across leakers, all you really need to do is sneak past them on your tippy toes. It looks kind of goofy, but it saves you both ammo and health. Another cool feature is weapon upgrades. There are upgrade keys scattered throughout the game. Pistol upgrade, for instance, turns it into a burst-fire handgun, while a shotgun upgrade makes it so powerful that it not only blows a zombie's head off, but sometimes part of the torso as well, kicking your character back a step from a recoil. That earns it a solid 10 out of 10 in my personal rate this shotgun category.
Groovy.
But action is only part of what makes Resident Evil 2 such a great game. The other big piece is exploration and puzzles, which don't stray too far from the formula established in the first game. Move some stuff to get some stuff, which you'll stick into some other stuff to get a key with a symbol that matches a door, with the same symbol behind which you'll find another piece of stuff that lets you progress further. All of this comes with a decent amount of backtracking. The puzzles themselves aren't exactly rocket science. Basically, if you're capable of putting on pants in the morning without assistance, you'll be just fine. And finally, a very important part of the game, the bosses. There are two big guys you'll be running into throughout the story, Mr. X and William Birkin. Mr. X is essentially the final refined version of the Tyrant project. He and 5 other clones get dropped into Raccoon City. Throughout the game you'll run into him during scripted encounters, but you don't have to fight him. In fact, you can't kill him for good until the very end, when in true Resident Evil fashion you're handed a rocket launcher and can blow him to pieces. It's a pretty cool concept, a constant pursuer that never really lets you feel safe, which Resident Evil 3 will later expand on. That said, he's actually pretty easy to escape from, and nothing too serious happens even if you take a few hits along the way. Birkin, on the other hand, is a real threat. Throughout the game he mutates further and further, changing his appearance and becoming stronger. The first time you meet him, he still looks somewhat human, aside from the giant arm with an eyeball and his inhuman strength. Later he mutates into something closer to a tyrant, and by the finale of your first playthrough into, I don't know, something resembling a dog or a bull or whatever it is. Weird choice, but okay, still dangerous and makes for a fun cinematic fight.
You're one ugly motherfucker.
In the true ending, which you only unlock after the second playthrough, he mutates into, well, something completely undescribable. A huge growing biomass of teeth and tentacles that you have to feed the last of your ammo into, just to finally see the credits where it's destroyed once and for all. And an honorable mention goes to the giant alligator. Yeah, not really a boss fight since it goes down in a single shot, but worth bringing up for the sheer surprise factor. Have you ever found it strange that in Resident Evil only humans mutate into horrific monsters, while animals like spiders, sharks and alligators just get really big? So when you're done with the main course but still have room left for some Resident Evil 2 dessert, I highly recommend checking out the bonus content. Small disclaimer, for this review I played the GOG version of the game and all the footage was recorded there, which means all the bonus modes plus the awesome art and video gallery are available right away, no conditions required. Unlike on the console version where you had to sweat your way into A rank to unlock the first survivor or to tear your ass apart trying to unlock the Tofu survivor. The fourth survivor is basically the kind of thing they charge you money for nowadays as paid DLC. A short story starring Hank, an Umbrella mercenary and one of the guys sent to retrieve a sample of the G-Virus. Waking up in the sewers you find yourself knee-deep in shit, both literally and figuratively. You need to escape to the rooftop of the police station, but standing in your way are hordes of zombies, dogs, lickers, spiders, crows, those damn walking acid-spitting plants, and even Mr. X. To fight through all this, you've got a handgun with 168 bullets, a shotgun with 20 shells, a magnum with 16, bullets I suppose in that case, 2 herb mixes, green plus blue, and very fast legs. This skill run demands tight execution and a clear understanding of when to shoot and when to carefully slip past enemies, because your ammo is calculated down to the last bullet. Once you've mastered the fourth survivor, you can test yourself in the Tofu survivor, where you run the same route but as a giant block of tofu. This mission is considered the hardest in the game, since Tofu is armed only with a knife, 2 green herbs and 1 blue, but honestly I didn't find it that tough. Tofu has way more health than Hank, which means you can afford to make a lot more mistakes. Finally, there is Extreme Battle mode. You pick your character, Leon, Claire, Chris or Ada, each with their own loadout, and make your way from the Umbrella Lab back to the police station, where you need to find hidden bombs. Once you've collected them all, the game ends. Even with ink ribbons included, this is a pretty tough mod, especially on the 3rd difficulty level, so if you're into challenge runs, this one's for you. To wrap things up, I won't say anything unexpected. Resident Evil 2 is easily one of the best games in the series, and it completely deserves to be the first in line for a remake. But even with its outdated graphics, tank controls and fixed camera angles, it's still a blast to play thanks to its rock-solid gameplay and compelling story. Highly recommended. And hey, I also recommend leaving a like, dropping a comment and subscribing to my channel. That way I can keep making more videos like this and you'll keep getting new gaming content. This was Radio Nick, thanks for sticking with me and I'll see you in the next video.
Game over.